Could Baki Hanma be a bodybuilder? Let's find out. So we all know that Baki is an amazing fighter and he's super ripped. He's got muscles for days and he's got that iconic demon back. And last time we observed Yuujirou, his father, from a bodybuilding perspective, and he did very well. We rated him at a 37.5 out of 40, which is a tremendous rating, essentially stating that he could definitely compete at the Mr. Olympia competition. If you haven't seen that video, make sure to check it out. I'll link it in the description down below. But for today's video, we're gonna look at his son, Baki. So if we take a look at our chart here, we can see that it's essentially set up the same as Yuujirou's. We have pictures of Baki and we have professional bodybuilders, except now we don't have any open bodybuilders because Baki wouldn't do so well in the open division, in my opinion. I think he would do better in the classic or men's physique divisions. So right here at the bottom, we have your runner-up for the classic Mr. Olympia, Terrence Ruffin, or Rough Diesel. He has one of my favorite physiques in all of bodybuilding, and I think he'll probably win the Mr. Olympia pretty soon. Up here, we have Brandon Hendrickson, who is your Mr. Olympia in the men's physique division. And if you can't remember the differences, basically men's physique usually are just a little bit smaller and they wear board shorts, whereas with the classic physique division, they show off their legs and they're modeled after the golden era of the 70s and 80s. And so we have many pictures of Baki over here. We have his back right here and a couple of front torso shots. And just like with Yuujirou, we're just going to be looking at the upper part of the body because there's not a whole lot of clear lower body shots. And typically when I'm looking at Baki, I'm using this picture right here. But I actually think he looks bigger in this one, so I'm gonna use this for this bodybuilding video. And if you'll remember, bodybuilders are scored based on 4 primary criteria. You have muscle mass, symmetry, conditioning, and proportions. And for the purposes of character ratings, like we do on our channel, I've really simplified that. In actual bodybuilding, it's a little bit more nuanced. And of course, in real life bodybuilding, they have the 8 compulsory poses plus the 4 quarter turns, and they're put side by side with each other on stage. But for the purposes of our video, to keep it simple, we're just gonna use these 4 primary criteria. So let's go ahead and jump into the ratings. So to answer the question of if Baki could be a bodybuilder, we have to see how well he would do in these criteria. So let's start at number 1, which is muscle mass. So as you can see, Baki obviously has a great amount of muscle mass. He's got full muscle bellies, especially here in the delts, in the chest, even in the arms, especially the forearms, which we'll come back and talk about later. In all of these shots, he has really full muscle bellies. They don't look flat at all. They look really big and buff, just like these guys do over here. So from a muscle mass perspective, if we compare him to, say, Brandon Hendrickson in these 2 shots right here, I thought these were very comparable shots. You can see that Baki's doing really well in the chest, the shoulders, the arm game, even in the waist, although I do think in these shots, Brandon's looks a little bit smaller. I think Baki may have him beat slightly in the chest, and I think Brandon's got Baki beat in the lats. So it's very comparable, and if Brandon's your Mr. Olympia, he would probably get a 10 out of 10 on muscle mass for this division, so I would definitely give Baki a 10 out of 10 as well. Now this is from a men's physique division, although I do think he could compete in a classic physique division as well. Okay, so next up we're going on to symmetry. So obviously Baki has pretty good symmetry because that's the way he's drawn. And symmetry, basically, does he look the same on both sides? And that's actually really easy to determine with characters because they're drawn to be that way, unless they're just not. But in real life, it gets a lot more nuanced than that. You can usually almost always spot some asymmetry in some of your competitors. Now, these guys are some of the top in the world, so it's a little more difficult to find it, whereas if you went to an amateur bodybuilding competition, it would be very easy to see asymmetry in the competitors, especially in something like a front double bicep. You can almost always see that one bicep is bigger, more shredded than the other. You can also usually see it in the legs pretty good as well. So given this, Baki is definitely a 10 out of 10 on symmetry as well. Now, having said that, I have definitely come across some characters that are definitely not a 10 out of 10, but that's usually drawn on purpose. And before we move on to conditioning, if you're enjoying this video, you like bodybuilding, fitness, anime, then feel free to like and subscribe as it really helps out the channel and so you don't miss the next video. Okay, so up next is conditioning, which is essentially how lean is the competitor. Can we see striations? Can we see vascularity? And if we go over here to Baki, we can definitely see some striations right there in the chest. And I'm looking for vascularity. I actually don't see as much in these pictures, although I have seen other ones where his vascularity is very dominant. But another thing you can look for is muscular separation. How well can you define each muscle? For instance, right here, his delt is completely separated from his arm. You know, with a lot of people, you just look at their arm and there's like no separation at all. But with him, you can see the separation. You can see it in just all, I mean, the abs right here have really good separation, the forearms, all that stuff. You have really good separation in each of his muscles, which is a really good sign of conditioning. Now, having said that with Baki, I do know he has some pictures where he's a little more vascular than others. I'm actually going to tick off just one point because I don't see as much vascularity in these. And with characters, it really just depends on which picture we're looking at. This picture at the top right here, I would definitely give a completely different rating than this one right here. So I'm basically just taking the average of kind of what I see overall from these pictures right here. And if you look at someone like Brandon Hendrickson right here, this isn't even him on stage, but you can still see right there vascularity. You can see these veins really popping out, and they're very dominant in his physique. And especially like right here, you can see a lot. This isn't really a super high quality picture, but you can see vascularity in the legs, a lot of muscular separation, and they're very dry too. They don't look very watery. Baki is just a touch watery, which means that from a bodybuilding perspective, he's lacking just a bit in showing that vascularity. I know it sounds crazy because it looks like he has 0% body fat, and he's probably pretty damn close to that. But I would like to see just a little more vascularity. Having said that, I'm just gonna tick off 1 point just because I know other pictures may show it a little bit better than these. So I'm gonna give him a 9 out of 10 on conditioning. Finally, we go on to proportions. Now this is the area that Yuujirou was severely lacking in. Now he had really great proportions with a really good V-taper, but a lot of Baki characters, especially Yuujirou, have really massive forearms and really massive calves, and their upper arm doesn't really match that forearm, or their thighs don't really match the calves. Now with Baki, I actually think he's a bit more proportionate. Like his forearm is big for sure, but his upper arm also matches that. With Yuujirou, a lot of people thought that I was marking off by saying his forearms were too big, but in reality, it's not that they were too big per se, it was more like his bis and tris weren't big enough to match the forearm. So for them to be fighters and still look like this is just absolutely incredible. And I know the mangaka are big fans of bodybuilding. I know people like Biscuit Oliva were modeled after Ronnie Coleman and Sergio Oliva. And it shows because they get a lot of the human anatomy down perfectly in some of these shots. So I do think in some shots like this one, his forearms are still just a bit too big for his bis and tris. So I am going to tick off a point, but I'm not going to tick off as much as I would for Yuujirou. I'm just going to take off just 1, leaving him with a 9 out of 10 on proportions. Now, if you saw my short rating video of Baki from about a year or so ago, there may be about a point and a half difference or so, but that's why I wanted to come back and review some of these characters after over a year of experience and doing it in a long format video where I could just take the time to really delve into their physiques and compare them to actual bodybuilders. So in review and adding all of these up, Baki gets a 10 out of 10 on muscle mass, a 10 out of 10 on symmetry, a 9 out of 10 on conditioning, and a 9 out of 10 on proportions, leaving him with a grand total of a 38 out of 40. That is really impressive, and keep in mind these are just the basic 4 primary criteria for bodybuilding. If we wanted to, we could delve even more into something like his demon back right here and look at the predominance of like his traps or his lats, and we could break it down from a muscle to muscle kind of perspective. But overall, having said that, Baki has an incredible physique, one in which I think most guys would really love to have. So to answer our original question, could Baki be a bodybuilder? Well, with a 38 out of 40 score, 100% absolutely he could, and he would be a really good one. So let me know, would you like to have a physique like Baki's, or would you rather have a physique like his father's, Yuujirou's, or another character? Let me know which one you would like to look like most in the comments down below. And make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.